Hello everyone, my name is Abimanyu Hermawan. I'm here with my friends Rizka Novovinalda and Tasha Rehan. We are going to cover about the topic variation of translation techniques and strategy. And for the first 3 slides, it will be explained by me, and the second 3 slides is by Rehan, and the last 3 slides is by Geska. So let's get to it. So first slide, it is the difference between translation technique and strategy. I will only read it out. So first, translation technique, explained by Molina, and Hurtado. Technique is a procedure to analyze and classify how translation equivalence works. They have 5 basic characteristics. They affect the result of the translation. They are classified by comparison with the original. They affect microunits of the text. They are by nature discursive and characteristical and contextual. And the last one, they are functional. And translation strategy, explained by Hurtado. Strategies are procedures, whether conscious or unconscious, or verbal or non-verbal, used by the translator to solve problems that emerge when carrying out the translation process with a particular objective in mind. So the difference is, technique is what kind of procedures that we use to translate something, and strategy, it is the procedure but used by us unconsciously. There's a slight difference in there, but you will get it. And now we go in depth with translation techniques. So there are different approaches of classifying translation techniques, and I picked 2 of approach that I'm presenting here in the slide. It is by Vinay and Darbelnet from the book Stylistique compare du français et de l'anglais, and Peter Newmark's book in Textbooks of Translation. They have 2 different approaches. From Vinay and Darbelnet, they have direct translation. It includes borrowing, calque, or loan translation, and literal, and oblique translation that includes transposition, modulation, adaptation. And in the Peter Newmark procedures, he described that the approach of translation techniques are 5. Actually, there is more, but I only picked 5. It is recognized translation, naturalization, translation label, synonymy, and functional equivalent. And the next slide, Vinay and Darbelnet. So they explain that there are 2 kinds of translation technique. It is direct translation and oblique. Direct translation includes borrowing. It's a technique where a word is taken directly from another language. Like in the example here is plaza. Plaza in Indonesia, sometimes used as a mall center or something, but it can also mean that it is a main town or main street. So like maybe for example is Malioboro Street located in Yogyakarta. Why is it a plaza? Why it can be considered as plaza is because most people that go to Yogyakarta, they wanted to visit there, so it can be considered as main street in my opinion. And the next is calque or loan translation. It is a foreign word where it is translated and incorporated into another language. Like in the example, class, from English to class in Indonesia. And why is it so? Because it cooperates with how Indonesian pronounce it, and it is like that, class to class. And for the literal translation technique, it is sometimes inaccurate. Why? Because it only translates word for word. Like in the example, beer garden, which is an English word, translated to bir taman, which doesn't make sense in Indonesian grammar, in Indonesian language. So sometimes it can be used accurately, but most of the times it is inaccurate. And for oblique, that includes transposition. This technique is using a shift for the word class, like in the example, black box to kotak hitam. Why is it transposed? So it can accommodate with the grammar rule in Indonesian. Like black box, if translated word for word, it is hitam kotak, which doesn't make sense. And it's why it is transposed to kotak hitam. So it makes sense in the Indonesian language. And the next is modulation. Modulation is technique where a shift happens in point of view. Like in the example, phrase shall we, which is like an invitation to do something, in Indonesian translated as mari kita berangkat. It is also an invitation to do something, but in the sense of words or the word for word translation, they are different. That's why you use modulation to make the same point of view in the targeted language. And the next is adaptation. This technique gives a shift in the cultural environment of the text, like in the example white as snow, which means something is so white they look like snow. But in Indonesia, it is translated as seputih kapas, which is different. Why? Because it also differs in the culture. In the English culture, they don't have that term for describing something as white as a cotton. But in Indonesia, they don't have snow. There are no snowy season in Indonesia, so they use white as snow to refer to another thing that is colored white too, like kapas. And that's it.
Okay, we are stepping to the next material, that EUMAX procedures. First, recognize translation. Use of the official translation. Example, United Kingdom or Britannia Raya. Then, neutralization. Adapts the ESL word to normal pronunciation, then to normal morphology of the TL. Example, satellite to satellite. The next, translation label. Professional translation, usually of new term, which should be made in inverted commas, to be discreetly withdrawn when there is a new official translation. Example, heritage language to bahasa moyang. And the next, synonym. Giving a better explanation using near equivalent TL to SL, where the precise equivalent may or may not exist. Example, kain persen, tawa orang yang dermawan. And the next, functional equivalent is a culturally neutral word and add a specifying term. Example, freshman, or pelajar yang baru lulus dan baru masuk universitas. And the next topic, material, is translation strategies. Translation strategies can be classified into three. First, structural strategies, and the second, semantic strategies, and the third, pragmatic strategies. Structural strategies consist of addition, subtraction, transposition, and semantic strategies consist of trope change, distribution change, paraphrase. And the pragmatic strategies consist of explicitness change, visibility change, partial translation, trans-editing. And next is structural strategies that consist of additions, subtractions, and transposition. What's additions? Additions is adding certain words in order to comply with the Taylor grammatical rule. For example, saya guru become I'm a teacher. And subtractions is reducing some grammatical elements of the SL to comply with the TL grammatical rule. Example, her husband is an engineer. Become suami saya itu engineer. And the next is transposition. Transpositions can be applied to phrase or sentence level. In phrase, the order of words is transposed. In sentence, the sentence structure is rearranged because the SL structure is non-existent in the TL structure. Example, musical instrument become alat music. In sentence, I find it more difficult to translate a poem than an article. Become, bagi saya menerjemahkan puisi itu lebih sulit daripada menerjemahkan artikel ini. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Diska Novalinalda. My name number is 1932012N2. I will continue my friend's presentation. We will continue into the semantic strategies. There are several parts I will be explained. The first is synonym. In this strategy, the translator select the class's synonym. The translator can also use the source language word which is more or less the same for words, which general in nature. In the example above, that is cute, translated into lucu in bahasa. Cute and lucu in bahasa is synonym. Cute indicates small size, good looks, or beauty, or an attraction to play with. Meanwhile, lucu in bahasa only show that the child is attractive. Go to the next part, descriptive equivalent. According to the new mark, as reflected in the name, this equivalent is trying to describe the meaning or the function of the word source language. For example, gadis itu menari dengan luasnya. Translate into, the girl is dancing with great fluidity and grace. For that, the descriptive equivalent must be used. When a descriptive equivalent is used for translating culture-related words, then a conventional analysis is used to translate common words. And the last part in the slide, we have distribution change. Distribution change can also called depreciation. Depreciation means of the component of the word source language to be depression. to be depressed. For example, translated word automobile into mobil in bahasa. Here the elements the word auto is removed. So the word automobile is shortening. Expansion in the opposite of depreciation. Here the word element is expanded inside short language. An example in translation, well, translated as ikan paus in bahasa. In this example, ikan is added because if only translating into paus, it is not very good in bahasa. Go to the next slide, that is pragmatic strategies. We have explicitness change. Here, the translator enters additional information inside the text of the translation because he argues that the reader is needed. This additional information can be placed in text in the bottom of the page. For example, the skin, which is hard and scaly, is grayish in color, thus helping to camouflage it from predators when underwater, so that it will be translated into kulitnya yang keras dan bersisih, berwarna abu-abu. Dengan demikian, kulit ini membantunya berkamuflase, menyesuaikan diri dengan keadaan lingkungan untuk menyelamatkan diri dari predator, hewan pemangsa, jika berada di dalam air. Go to the next slide. We have visibility change, partial translation, and trans-editing. Visibility change, it is a strategy to increase the presence of the translator. They usually add footnotes. For example, the man who got robbed, was dead. It shows that the translator attempts to translate the text. Go to the next part, that is partial translation. It is a strategy of translating a part of the text, not the entire of the text. In the partial of translation, it is not necessary enough to translate word by word. For example, we have Julia Michaels' song says that, even though I know it is not so distant. Translated into, meskipun ku tahu itu tidak jauh, atau meskipun ku tahu itu tidak sangat jauh. We have the last part, that is trans-editing. Trans-editing means the extensive editing of the original text when it is necessary. For example, we have the Dark Knight movie says that, why so serious? In this quote, we are completely lacking a verb. However, this phrase has been used in this way at least 3 centuries. Because of that, because it is very common, so we guess we can cut the Joker a break this time. We usually rearranging or even changing the organization of the source language text, information, wording, and etc. Thank you for that is my I think enough from us the explanation about variation of translation technique and strategies. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.